Well, thank you, Fred. I think we all agree that ultimately a much better exchange of people to people, all levels, is the foundation of a very sound um, bilateral relationship. The more we travel back and forth, the more we visit each other, the more we're going to start to keep the politicians honest, keep them on their toes. Frankly, in my judgment, the politicians, the government officials in both countries often get in the way. They kind of stir things up, stir up nationalism. It makes it a bit difficult for people in one country to want to go visit the other. Now, to be fair, the world's changed a lot the last several years. China's become so large, 1.4 billion people. Its military budget expanded at a rapid rate. And I think that somewhat frightens Americans. Americans are wondering, where is China going? What are China's intentions? And as a consequence, it's become somewhat politically correct in the United States to be uh, fearful of China or uh, critical of China. And today, about 73% of Americans, according to the Pew study, don't have an unfavorable view of China. So the question is, what can we do about all that? I think all the exchanges that have been suggested are helpful. Some of us have participated in the S&EDs and all the all the government level exchanges. There have been lots of strict people-to-people exchanges. Um, Students visit each other's country, although in that category it's about one way. About 300,000 Chinese students go to the U.S. and about 20,000, if that, come to China. It's just the same thing with tourists. But when I was in the embassy, 3 million Chinese tourists visited the U.S. and not near that many would visit the United States. Frankly, I think all these ideas of exchanges are good. But to be honest about it, it's going to be difficult for Americans to want to visit China. I'm talking about tourists and even academics, and maybe even vice versa, until both countries indicate, uh, each country indicates to the other that it in fact wants to work with the other, not just by words, but by deeds. The United States is going to have to uh, show to China by actions that it does not want to put China down, that it is not trying to stop China's rise. Rather, it wants to work with China. That takes a lot of actions that the United States government is going to have to undertake. The same thing goes with respect to China. You know, a lot of Americans are frightened of China. What are China's intentions? Does China want to be, if not a world hegemon, does China want to be a hegemon in the Indo-Pacific? The Americans just don't know. They're afraid. And part of that is complicated with advances in national security technologies, advances in other technologies where one country could perhaps gain advantage over the other. It makes it much more complicated. So, my judgment, China must show, not by words, but by deeds. China must show to the United States and to the world that it does not want to be the world hegemon. It does not intend to be Indo-Pacific hegemon. Rather, it wants to just be work with the U.S. on certain global issues like COVID, climate change, and others we can think of, and compete on a so-called level playing field with the United States and with other countries. Now, there's a concern in the United States that China does a lot of talking. They don't do much doing. That is, they'll say they'll do something, but then don't. So that's why I focus so much on actions and on deeds as opposed to words. And the more China shows, not just says, but it shows us does want to, in fact, really work with the United States, but by actions that it takes, whether security, trade, global health, whatnot, that's going to go a long, long way. And it's going to start to reduce some of the fear that exists in the United States with respect to China. And start to undermine some of the statements that the very conservative senators make about China. It's going to make it more difficult because China will show that those claims are not valid. So I've made this point many times in many forums, but I still think it's very, very true. And until I see it not true, until I see actions that don't result in an indication that China wants to work with the U.S., I'll just keep on with that message because I think it's a key. So long as the United States also shows it does not want to stop China's rise, rather work with China, try to find that respect that we all talk about.